Northwest Airlines Flight 255, a McDonnell Douglas MD-82, crashed shortly after takeoff from Detroit Metropolitan-Wayne County Airport on August 16, 1987, at about 8:46 p.m. EDT, killing all 6 crew members and 148 of its 149 passengers. The sole survivor was a 4-year-old girl, Cecelia Cichan, who sustained serious injuries. It was the second deadliest aviation accident at the time in the United States and the second deadliest involving the McDonnell Douglas MD-80 series. The flight and its 2 pilots originated at Minneapolis-Saint International Airport, flying to MBS International Airport in Saginaw, Michigan, and was scheduled to terminate at John Wayne Airport in Santa Ana, California, with intermediate stops at Detroit Metropolitan-Wayne County Airport in Romulus, Michigan and Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, Arizona. Aircraft and crew. The aircraft, a twin-engine McDonnell Douglas MD-82 with tail number N312AC, was piloted by 57-year-old Captain John Moss and 35-year-old First Officer David J. Dodds. Moss was an experienced pilot, who had worked for the airline for nearly 32 years and had 20,859 hours of flying time. Dodds had logged 8,044 flight hours during his career, and had worked for the airline for more than 8 years. Flight 255 carried 149 passengers and 6 crew members. The jet was manufactured in 1981, entering service with Republic Airlines. It was acquired by Northwest Airlines in its merger with Republic in 1986, and the aircraft bore mixed Republic-Northwest livery at the time of the accident. Crash. Flight 255 made its takeoff roll on Detroit's runway 3C at approximately 8:45 p.m. EDT, with Moss at the controls. The plane lifted off the runway at 170 knots, and began to roll from side to side just under 50 feet above the ground. The MD-82 was not able to climb as a result of the flaps not being extended that are used on takeoff and landing and provide the needed lift. As a result, the plane rolled 40 degrees to the left and struck a light pole near the end of the runway, severing 17 feet of its left wing and igniting jet fuel stored in that wing. It then rolled 90 degrees to the left, striking the roof of an Avis car rental building. The plane crashed inverted onto Middlebelt Road and struck vehicles just north of its intersection with Wick Road, killing 2 people on the ground in an automobile. It then broke apart, with the fuselage skidding across the road, disintegrating and bursting into flames as it hit a railroad overpass and the overpass of eastbound Interstate 94. Passengers. 7 of the deceased passengers resided in Orange County, California, and 4 additional people had Orange County as their destination. The remainder of the passengers were residents of Arizona, Michigan, or other states. One of the passengers on Northwest 255 was Nick Vanos, a center for the Phoenix Suns. 2 motorists on nearby Middlebelt Road also died and 5 people on the ground were injured, 1 seriously. The bodies were moved to the Northwest hangar at the airport, which served as a temporary morgue. More than 30 passengers on the flight were under age 25. The youngest was 4-month-old Catelyn Best of Mesa, Arizona. 2 12-year-olds, Arlene Nelson of Detroit and Justin Keener of Scottsdale, Arizona, were unaccompanied minors. The sole survivor of the crash was 4-year-old Cecelia Cichan of Tempe, Arizona. She was found belted in her seat by Romulus firemen, several feet from the bodies of her mother, Paula Cichan, her father Michael and her 6-year-old brother David. After the crash, Cecelia lived with her maternal aunt and uncle in Birmingham, Alabama. Aftermath. The cockpit voice recorder provided evidence of the flight crew's omission of the taxi checklist. Although the stall warning was enunciated, from the CVR investigators determined that the oral takeoff warning was not enunciated by that warning system. The NTSB was unable to determine a cause for the electrical power failure in the central oral warning system. The failure of the takeoff warning system was caused by the loss of input 28 VDC. Electric power between the airplane's left DC bus and the cause unit. The interruption of the input power to the cause occurred at the P40 circuit breaker. The mode of interruption could not be determined. The board could not determine if the circuit breaker had been tripped, intentionally opened, or if electric current failed to flow through the breaker to the cause while the breaker was closed. Because the P-40 circuit breaker was badly damaged during the accident, it was impossible for the safety board to determine positively its pre-impact condition. There were three possible conditions that would have caused power to be interrupted at the P-40 circuit breaker. The circuit breaker was intentionally opened by either the flight crew or maintenance personnel, the circuit breaker tripped because of a transient overload and the flight crew did not detect the open circuit breaker, or the circuit breaker did not allow current to flow to the cause power supply and did not enunciate the condition by tripping. In 2008, Spanair Flight 5022 crashed near the Adolfo Suarez Madrid Barajas Airport due to incorrect flap settings created by the omission of the taxi checklist and failure of the warning system. 154 people died in that accident, which involved the same aircraft type as Flight 255. Conclusions of NTSB. In addition to other findings, the NTSB investigation of the accident concluded. The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the probable cause of the accident was the flight crew or unregistered trademark's failure to use the taxi checklist to ensure that the flaps and slats were extended for takeoff. Contributing to the accident was the absence of electrical power to the airplane takeoff warning system, which thus did not warn the flight crew that the airplane was not configured properly for takeoff. The reason for the absence of electrical power could not be determined. Memorials. In memory of the victims, a black granite memorial was erected in 1994. It stands at the top of the hill at Middlebelt Road and I-94, the site of the crash. The memorial has a dove with a ribbon in its beak reading, "Their spirit still lives on." Below it are the names of those who perished in the crash. Another monument to the victims stands next to Phoenix City Hall. On August 16, 2007, the 20th anniversary of the crash, a memorial service was held at the site. For some people affected by the incident, it was their first return to the site since the crash. After the crash, Northwest followed standard procedure. The airline no longer used 255 as a flight number. From late 1987 until the company was acquired by Delta in early 2010, the last non-stop flight from Detroit to Phoenix was renumbered as Flight 261. Delta continues the retirement of 255 by Northwest. As of 2014, there is no Delta Flight 255. On August 16, 2012, a memorial service was again held at the crash site. Family and friends of the victims and others from across the Metro Detroit area attended, and a local priest read each victim's name aloud. Many attendees had seen recent local media footage of Cecelia Cichan Crocker, and few knew her whereabouts or condition after the crash. Media coverage. Flight 255 is featured in a Season 9 episode of the National Geographic Channel's Mayday, A Lambing Silence. It explores the events surrounding the crash and its investigation, with interviews of Flight 255 rescue workers, investigators and other MD-80 pilots. Cecelia Cichan Crocker appears in a 2013 documentary, Sole Survivor, about 4 sole survivors of plane crashes. She did not speak publicly about the crash until 2013, when the documentary was released. Crocker has a tattoo of an airplane on her wrist in remembrance and says that she is not afraid of flying. See also: American Airlines Flight 191, the USA's worst aviation disaster to date. Delta Airlines Flight 1141, another crash somewhat similar to this one. LAPA Flight 3142, list of accidents and incidents on commercial airliners, list of sole survivors of airline accidents or incidents, Lufthansa Flight 540, Northwest Airlink Flight 2268, another aviation disaster that took place at Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport in 1987. Spanair Flight 5022, another MD-82 that crashed in 2008 for similar reasons to NW255. Yemenia Flight 626, a 2009 plane crash of which a young female passenger was also the sole survivor. West Caribbean Airways Flight 708, another MD-82 that crashed on the same date as NW255 in 2005. References. External links: Northwest Flight 255 Memorial Website, NTSB Full Report, NTSB Probable Cause, Pre-crash photos of N312AC on airliners.net.